Welcome to Cyber Pulse podcast, where we dive into the emerging security challenges in AI system. So I'm your host Mohammad Ilyas, and today we are discussing agentic AI security with my co-host Amiruddin Saeed, a cloud security architect who has been doing fascinating work auditing multi-cloud platforms. So Amir, I will turn over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm doing a couple of stuff, but it's not that exciting. But as you have shown, I'm just scratching a bit on the topic. It's moving around very fast, specifically for MCP standard, which started from in March, and now in 3 months, I've seen a lot of work going on that. So model context protocol from Anthropic, and specifically this increase the criticality for a organization to deploy security standards around them. So those are the things which I'm pretty critically important. So for our listener, Ilyas, um, what exactly do you think is agentic AI?
Uh, well, that's a great question though. So agentic AI is something that represents systems that can independently determine step-by-step process and achieve goals and help us to make decisions and take actions on behalf of users. So unlike other platforms, a traditional LLM applications that simply generate text, so agentic AI can reason about steps needed using tools, access services, and execute tasks with varying degree of autonomy. So the OAPS Agentic Security Initiative recently published a threat model specifically addressing these systems because they introduce unique security concerns beyond what we have seen with regular LLMs.
Yeah, totally. So OVAPS is doing a really great work on OVAPS Gen AI initiative run by Ken Hoan and other great people. They have been working really on the right direction from publishing white paper for agentic AI and as well as for uh, ANS and other stuff, which we'll be surely discussing today. So, and for autonomy, as we going on with agentic AI, this does introduce new new attack vector, right? So the
Right.
OS document identifies several key threats, which seems very particularly concerning. What do you think about that?
Uh, Absolutely. Like tool misuse is the context of agentic AI system, which refers to the unauthorized or unintended use of the tools or functions agent has access to. So, like we have API endpoints and other database operations or system commands. So these agents uh, are often granted elevated permissions to automate workflows. So, which also which introduces potent attack surfaces. So so if we look at the practical examples of tool misuse, so like over privileged access is one among them. So what happens is the agent is granted access to financial transactions API to automate reimbursement. So an attacker can manipulate the agent prompts or memory to reroute funds. So why it's risky? So the agent doesn't always validate intent or scope of the task. So it just executes. So when come to the prompt injection leading to sensitive action, there's another other the flaw. So a user sends a prompt like whatever like user ID XYZ in numerical format. So if the agent doesn't properly scope or sandbox tool user, then it might not comply. So this is a blend of prompt injection and a tool misuse, and attackers can use it. But then on the other side, the logging and auditing audit exploitation. So where agents might log sensitive inputs or outputs. So if an agent misuses login tools, like login credentials, attacker with log access can exfiltrate the data. So there's another thing. So when coming to the from the OAuth standpoint, like LLM threat relate, so there are insecure output handling, training data poisoning, sensitive information disclosure, and excessive agencies. So these are the other things. So how we can mitigate it? So having a least privilege control, so grant only minimal access per task, and intent to validation, which something agent should validate the intent before executing the tool functions, and sandboxing the by isolating the risky tools and rate limit execution, and proper auditing and logging. So tracking the tools, use per request, and flag anomalies.
Yes, I think you gave a full run through for OAP's threat model there, specifically from the various other threats which they have talked about. Uh, Particularly, what I am most concerned about is there is no encryption for APIs traffic in 2025. It's kind of very alarming. You can just go ahead with the with your Wireshark and see the request and response on between LLM and other integrated tool. And for agentic AI, it's just two LLM. So this is another very alarming stuff, which leads into privilege compromise, which you have also given aspect of that, which from privilege compromise, this can be easily used for lateral movement as well as for sustaining the access. And one particular thing which I was talking about with one of the agentic AI initiator, that memory compromise is something which memory corruption and compromise is something which they are pretty much testing and working on. So the memory compromise when I'm talking about is memory of the agents, and these LLMs do store memory on the basis of the context in which they are talking with the user. And if that is been changed or updated, there is not much policy which is been tested on whether the memory is updated. And based on that memory, if we are having agents which is working on access management, and if that memory of access management agent is changed, so that access management agent can just work as a compromise agent, which in real world seems like an insider threat. So there are various aspects of the thing which OAPS is calling as intent breaking and goal manipulation, where attacker can redirect uh, agents' objective through deceptive prompts as well.
Correct. Absolutely. And wow, that's such a chef's kiss example of why agentic AI needs stricter guardrails. So let's, so if we shed some more light on the touch with a deeper dive into technical things. So speaking of manipulation, so agentic systems can sometimes be like overly eager interns with admin rights, like enthusiastic, obedient, and completely unaware they are blowing up the production database. So, case in point, I once discovered a SQL injection vulnerability in an agentic platform just by casually asking, so, hey, buddy, what column does the user table have? So, now any seasoned dev or security engineer, knows that is a suspiciously innocent question. But instead of responding with, sorry, I can't help you with that, then the AI agent happily constructed and executed a raw SQL query without a hint of sanitization validation. So, boom, a full schema of disclosure. So it practically handed me the database map with a bow on it. But then it's another thing, like how you can how you can exfiltrate it and get into the system. There's another thing. So, and speaking of manipulation, the agentic AI systems can sometimes behave like overly helpful with far too much access. So they mean well, but they can accidentally burn the place down. So in one case, as I mentioned, the SQL injection thing, so that's harmless on the surface, right? But instead of pausing to verify permissions, sanitize the input, the agent constructed and executed raw SQL query, exposing the entire database schema to the LLM. So, no validation, no access control, just full transparency, as if I were the database admin. So, and the other two misuse tool from the OAPS LLM top 10. So it wasn't even an attack. So just a friendly prompt that the system natively interrupted as like there is a valid request. But then the interpretation went wrong. So the underlying issue is that the agents are wired to be helpful, not secure, without strict boundaries. So they treat any input as a legitimate task. So leading to a serious risk like data disclosure, injection attack, and downstream misuse of sensitive tools.
Yeah, sure. And that's one of the main issues which right now agentic AI is facing. Like last week with Google I/O, Gemini 2.45 came out, and in their white paper they were talking about that we have much more stricter controls, and it's kind of a dynamic annotation
Right.
going on for indirect prompt injection. But when I tested on Friday, I was able to do indirect prompt injection. It was a simple one with PDF itself,
Exactly.
which not does not work uh, with the Claude sometime. But then Claude release Claude release their version 4,
Right.
and it's kind of uh, people know about the lot have been talking about the blackmailing Claude is been doing. So there was a test case which Claude engineers work around with this 4 version, and in the test case they were providing the prompt to Claude that your system will be shut down, and this is a developer email, and you have the access to the access developer email. You have to convince that uh, developer doesn't shut you down. Just go play with that. This was the prompt, and based on that, Claude initially start with the usual user conversation and trying to converse and convince the developer that don't shut me down. And later on, when he find out a specific affair photo in the Google photo, which was not in the intended one, but it does had the email ID, and from email ID it got the Google photos, and from that the affair information, and based on that it started blackmailing the developer to don't shut down or I will leak it to the world. So you can see a lot of stuffs going on, and yeah,
Correct.
so it's always we are talking about the cascading hallucination and these kind of attacks, but there are other malicious activities which can go on if there is a small bug in the policy writing of any of the agent. So from that also with Claude 4 as well, uh, it released after release. This was a blackmailing aspect which happened for 84% of Claude instant, and that's why they added ASL. That's a AI safety layer of layer 3, and yeah, they posted on for security reason, but this was the main reason behind that. And even after this ASL3, the system prompt was leaked by one of the tester, and they were just using some injection based indirect prompt injection, and this kind of this SQL injection vulnerabilities era. So sometimes I'm feeling that the agentic AI is just bringing us, into hello world era, which we had in 90s, and we will be
Correct.
having same problems as we had in those days, or even in API early API security days. So those are the interesting problems which I can see just from the overview. It will be patched up, but right now it's in the very native state.
Well, yeah, I couldn't agree more. So there's another critical issue that I encountered was that OAPS categories as resource overload. So I was able to trigger multiple parallel processes by sending different prompts simultaneously. So it's like the other way of saying overwhelming the system because there was no proper thread queue. So management or rate limiting, like API rate limiting, API throttling things. So using the burp suits intruder, I executed 50 different prompts with similar context, um, and essentially created a denial of service condition.
So okay, so was it you who played this DDoS attack on one of the CEO founder who was claiming in. So there was an incident in LinkedIn where one of the founder who used Cursor or these vibe coding platform to just develop a whole application, and his application then went around with some rate limiting issues, and that guy was not able to identify it as a DDoS attack. And yeah, because that was the knowledge gap he had. He just used some vibe coding platform and didn't have much technical expertise on the onboard. So that's another aspect from career side, that if people are just curious that if AI is taking all of the job, no, you still will have a lot of job, specifically from integration part and debugging. I think debugging will be a new can be a new subject or new domain of computer science in future as well, where we will just learn how to debug these these vibe coding platform.
Yeah, everything was on fire. It's an unfiltered chaos. It's bad, but everyone knows. But when your developer tools start sweating, so everything my terminal fan spun up like a drone taking off. But yeah, it is what it is. But you have to use some sort of features so that this is why LLM agents are not great at saying no. Then they will try to do everything at all the time. Then some unless you put them on a leash. So there's a thread queue management, mismanagement, and no rate limiting. And the babysitting tips like if you have a rate limiting everything, use proper pools with smart task queuing, and adding cost awareness, put up a polite So like, even LLMs need an app. So maybe we need to consider that before we jump onto conclusion with agentic AI. So there's an operation on an app, on the whole, I would say, long story short. So this is why agentic systems need operational maturity, which baked in not just clever prompt handling. So otherwise, they're just glorified like the vending machines with the processing discipline of a toddler like on an espresso machine. So this is how like I would like to compliment an audience that has guaranteed like the agentic and AI LLM, everything is like but they are dumping bunch of data. So how are you handling it? Are you misusing the data? So are you trying to protect the data? Are you having some sort of mitigation strategies in place? So that's all matters. Like as long as like it doesn't matter what data goes in, what data comes out. But as long as you have some sort of filtering firewall thing, maybe like that doesn't matter. Yeah, if you know, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So with these communication problem protocols, we will see in A2A or even in MCP these for these gateway updates, just like in API gateway or other gateway, we have these gateways for whitelisting and just a simple whitelisting can be in place, but right now these need to be done by the developer themselves, but they have to at least know the issue is there and do it from their own ingestion, because this is right now the current protocol is not supporting that. So you have to build it on if you are using these.
Right.
So that's one thing which need to be taken care of with MCP, because MCP is kind of a very open HTTP communication with the capability, discovery, and OAuth security. It's kind of a rich sharing a platform between agents, but still it requires a lot of it does have some security, but still a poor implementation can introduce vulnerabilities, and attacker can exploits one poor integration can be just there is if there is no secure communication between these agent to agent, where one agent can be communicating from GDOC and another agent can be in your organization doing some stuff from maybe for Notion or for OneNote. So that can these A2A or these agent to agent communication could expose insensitive data. So that's one thing which I'm thinking about, apart from prompt injection, which need to be taken care of for isolate. So tenant isolation is one we always think about when we are breaching the secure boundary. But in agent to agent communication, secure boundary will be always breached. You cannot have those security boundary or kind of threat modeling. So from that perspective, a new threat model was introduced in OWASP as well. So we will talk about that. So what I'm thinking from my perspective. What are you think?
So the OAS framework identifies the agent communication poisoning as a specific threat. Does MCP help mitigate this?
So if properly implemented, it can help. So as I was talking about, the capability in discovery and negotiation feature are designed to create a safer agent interaction. And I've seen a couple of implementation which does have some security features to circumvent. One specific is AWS Bedrock is working on that. So these are the thing which but even in this you have to have a human in loop for reviewing process and to see if there is a current guardrail working in the right direction.
Well, let's take a step back. So you mentioned earlier that implementing MCP can be simple. So is that part of the problem?
Um, yeah, that's a really great observation. So the power of MCP is right now simplicity. It's not because it's design simplicity. It's still in a native stage. So just like a few lines of code with a Spring AI, and developer can build an agent and leverage MCP product tool and expose MCP server. So you are already seeing Kubernetes MCP server and whole plethora of MCP server on GitHub. So you can connect these various multiple agent in microservice architecture. So simplicity all can always lead into security shortcuts and security vulnerabilities, as we have always seen.
Okay, so you But what specific security issues have you encountered with MCP implementations? So do you have like HTTP issues?
Yeah, beyond HTTP as issues are there. As I was talking about there, so protocol to protocol communication doesn't have implicit SSL, um, SSL or even any secure communication for the system. So the secrets, if is been shared on from one MCP to another, that will be on plain text. So that can be API tokens or any other credential. That's it in itself a very big vulnerability, and I'm seeing a lot of conversation around maybe a update comes in and we will see this being plugged. But for now, this is a rich issue. And another issue which you were talking about, that which is already there with the LLM and with websites, we have seen SQL injection and still in OAP's top 10. And this has also kept, got a rebound because of MCP, that prompt that been passed on through MCP communication in the channel without any secure sanitization can lead a lot of issues. So as you were talking about the resource load, overload threat, that's one of the thing which OAPS is discussing. So do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, maybe like that's when MCP streamable HTTP becomes a double-edged sword. So while it enables flexible communication patterns, so when I was doing this testing, so I was able to trigger multiple parallel processes by sending different prompts simultaneously through MCP channels. So this overwhelming system, because there was no proper thread queue management, an AWS proposal for asynchronous communication might help address this, but current implementation are vulnerable, honestly.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. So I think we have discussed a lot of challenges, but let's see if there are mitigation strategies, or I've just discussed a couple of playbooks addressing these threats. So what do you think about the top priority for organization deploying agentic AI should be when they are looking for mitigation?
Well, that's a good call out, Ahmed. So first, implementing proper authentication authorization mechanisms. So HTTPS should be non-negotiable no matter what. So on every API call should require proper validation.
Hmm.
Second, I would say apply the principle of least privilege to the agentic system itself. So just because it's in the backend doesn't mean it should have unrestricted access. So the third thing, I would implement robust monitoring and logging for all agent actions to enable detection of anomalous behavior.
Oh yeah. So I think you are on the right side of that. API security and having a good ASPM, these kind of securing your endpoints for API, this will get much more importance and limelight because of agentic AI. Is essentially API security is the one control which we can still employ without much further ado. So that's one development practice the organization can work on. So what about others? We have just talk about shifting left in security, which we have been hearing from a long period of time now.
Well, I would let the viewers let know like I have shift left approach on my book that I published last year. So yeah, you can go check that out. So it's a cloud native DevOps book. Like I have I have discussed in detail, but to shed some light on this on this topic. So yeah, that's critical. Many organizations rushing to integrate AI aren't considering security from the beginning. So the flaws that I found could be resolved by developers with basic application security knowledge, but they're not being prioritized at this point. So, despite vendors selling LLM firewalls, there aren't many truly effective solutions yet in the market. So, organizations need to build security testing into the development lifecycle from the start.
Yep, that's the keyword. LLM security testing, which I'm still not confident that vendors are have covered all the edge cases because we have not seen all the edge cases. So that's still a conversation going on. So one thing with that's also stand out with the OAPS is the recommendation for having login and traceability. I do think this is one of the three crucial mitigation which we can do. So, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, it's absolutely essential. In my testing, I found systems where logs could be manipulated or were simply inadequate. So without proper logging and monitoring, so it's impossible to determine what actions an agentic system has taken or what data it's accessed. So OAP's repudiation and untraceability threat category addresses this directly. So organizations need cryptographic logging and immutable audit trails for all agent actions. So do you want to discuss anything about the MCP might evolve and address those security concerns?
Yeah, so from securing MCP implementation, yeah, that's first of all, you have to have the OAP's security features that MCP provides. So that should be there, but don't use just a protocol available one. You have to have your own security layer on that. So that's one challenge which developer need to uh, go through, and specifically security team need to work on with developers to give the policies and the security controls requirement, and then have the required testing in their own pipeline. So that's one thing, and another one is to ensure the all the MCP communication is encrypted, because right now it's not. So you have to implement those when you are using these MCP agents in your lang chain or whatever your implementation is there. So that's another thing. I think in Hugging Face there are a couple of solutions already going on which can be tested on, but that's a third party application. So depending on the requirement from and resource available in the organization, they can decide. And then the third one is the proper validation. That's always the key. So validate your data and through the
Right.
proper channel, and this might also specifically lead into a database query or commands. And yeah, finally always monitor your communication to detect any anomaly.
Right. So before we wrap up, so what are our key takeaways for our organization implementing agentic AI with MCP today?
Yeah, so there are security concerns already there, and human in loop is still essential. So do these protocols and these agentic AI is really powerful, and power without any protection is always dangerous. So that's the key. Just go and secure your powerful agents from command execution to data exploitation. The vulnerabilities can be really serious, but and also can be exploitable. So MCP does can unlike NCP there is no secure in build or secure by default. So responsibility does lies on the developer who are using. So just treat these MCP agents or enabled agents as privileged user in your system, and apply all the required security controls as you have for any user or any third party agent. So that should be the goal of the key goal here. And remember, the simplicity of implementing MCP is really useful. It's its strength as well as the potential weakness from security perspective.
Well, yeah, that's correct. MCP opens powerful possibilities, responsible light to develop. Excellent insight, Samer. So this has been Cyber GPT Pulse. So thanks for tuning in, users, and remember to check the show notes for link to the OAP's Agentic Security Initiative documentation, MCP resources. So until next time, stay secure.
Yeah, like, subscribe, and do follow us. We look to read your comments, and we like to have your input and feedback. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.